And we're live to discuss the most intelligent sitcom that has been my pleasure to witness, and I would venture ever. Right then, so we can go over to the.
And in case you guys didn't know, it's Mr. Ben's birthday today.
Yes, it is.
Happy birthday!
Oh, thank you. On the 4th of March. It's now the 5th of March in the UK. Yes. Another year older, but not necessarily wiser. So what were your, before I show the grabs, what were your initial thoughts of the episode?
Well, I mean, I really didn't know what to expect. I liked it, but as far as my initial thoughts are, it's really hard for me to ever give I think it's going to be like this, just because I never know what to expect. It's quite different than what we've watched in the past.
Yeah,
but I do like
it. Even though it's a little bit of extra light over there. Even though you wouldn't have got some of the references, what were the kind of things that you did connect to? The kinds of things that you did find funny?
We'd have to go through it again. I don't remember off the top.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we will go over to the grabs, and what I need to do, folks, is I need to press a special button. It's the green share screen button, and I say that very carefully because a lot of the times I will say square shin, and so it starts off like this, and I'm going to now there will be another Ben appear in this hangout, and it is not, I repeat, not due to vanity. It is due to so I can see what you can see because of the way I'm sharing the screen. That's a little bit weird. That's gone a bit strange.
Uh-oh.
Join the hangout. Okay, I will join the hangout. No, that's a little bit weird. Okay, so I will. Maybe I clicked on the wrong thing there. That's weird. So I need to go Facebook message, because what I did is I sent the message to Haley, folks, and I need to click on that to open it up on the other computer. And people might be thinking, why did you not do this before? Ben, you have preparation time. Right, okay, here we go. And now I've got it right. Join as, and I've got to join as the correct person, not join as myself. I'll be joining as Ben Vaislan. This is a different Gmail account, and then I will be able to see what you see, then so I know that technically I'm doing it in the correct way. There you go. You'll see the other Ben appear at the bottom of the screen. Hi, other Ben. Right, and then I'll click on that square. So now I can see what you can see. So like I said, this is just like election returns, and where they're announcing the vote count. And this is like members of parliament, so it's like representatives in the lower house of Congress. And there he is winning, and then you've got the intro sequence. And this was the pilot, so the intro sequence isn't very elaborate. I think that maybe Nigel Hawthorne's character, Sir Humphrey Appleby, might be an INTJ. Initially, I thought like ISTJ, but then I thought, hang on a minute, it's very strategic about if we do this thing, it will lead to this result. The one that you instantly said, I don't think I like that guy. He seems like a weasel, something like that. I don't think you said the word weasel. But...
Do you think that's a case of FI kind of being a little whack?
Pardon?
That might be a case of FI going a little whack.
No, I mean, but what I like is the way he is written. I understand why he has that thought process. But part of it is protectionism, him protecting his job in the civil service. And a lot of it, him honestly believing these politicians are incompetent. They don't know how to run the government. They're here today, gone tomorrow. We've been here 20 and 30 years. We know how government works. They come out with these silly proposals and we have to try and implement it. So I can see his thought process. And everything he says makes sense. Like, for instance, where it goes through the episodes, it talks about what would have happened with that defense contract. And do you remember Donald Trump has recently been talking about why are they buying stuff from overseas? They should buy American. All that stuff about buying American. So, but we will get to that in the moment. So, and Obama. Oh yeah, I made some notes. Obama, before he became president, and just after, when he was president-elect, he was saying that it would be the most transparent administration ever. Not so much. And now you've got, let me see what happens here. Let's see where we, oh yeah, it's got the auto changer. So now I've got to go back here. And so, and now you've got Donald Trump, when he was campaigning, draining the swamp. He's going to try and cut down on the corruption. So we will see how much he actually gets done of that. And then there was the bit, I'll talk about that when I get to it. So what did it, so there was this section where he's waiting to get the call from the PM to know which position. So what happens in the UK is there isn't the separation of powers. The people, some of the people that get elected as representatives, as MPs, some of them can be chosen to be ministers. So for instance, you can have somebody who's an MP who is chosen to be the foreign minister, which is the Secretary of State. What happens in the United States is they pick someone from outside of the party. Now, sometimes they pick it from someone within inside the party and they have to give up their seat. So, for instance, Trump picked Senator Jeff Sessions and he had to give up his role in the Senate in order to be Attorney General. Or when he picked Mike Pence, where he was the governor of Indiana, and he had to give that up in order to run as vice president. Whereas in the UK, when someone's a minister, so like a secretary of a department, so like someone who's like the Secretary of Energy, they're also an MP. So like a representative on the congressional level. And so they still have to be elected. So he's an MP and he's waiting for the call from the Prime Minister to see which department he will get. So what did you, so in this section, what did you think of his like nervous reactions and like shooting for the phone and that sort of thing? What did you think of that? Because I remember you being amused by that section.
Yeah, but you know, it's not something I've ever actually witnessed someone actually do.
Yeah, but I sort of remember you being amused by.
Yeah, it was cute.
Yeah, and also maybe his reactions, like it sort of acted like an INTP there, where it's like all nervous and like the phone was going, and it's like always the Prime Minister, always the Prime Minister, get off the bloody line! I want to talk to the Prime Minister, because he's waiting for that important phone call to come through, and all the people were taking, because he's only got one line, one phone line. Yeah. And again, written in 1979, produced in 1979. And then I was thinking here, leather gloves, are they really going to keep out the cold? I don't think so. But I've got namby-pamby hands. And then when I looked at this guy's body, I was a little bit cheeky and I thought, who's his personal trainer? But that's a bit naughty. Right. But actually, I didn't think of that time. Oh yes, then there was that joke about the Office of the PM program, and he thought it was the Office of the PM. And then he's so happy when he finds out that he's got the Minister of Departmental Affairs. And then you just have the sequence of him going to London, going to the PM. Number 10 Downing Street. Now, actually, I think they had a little bit of a cock-up in the production because just as the camera panned up, it showed the two actors still standing, and then they walked because they sort of got the editing wrong, in my opinion. Sometimes you see that, you know, in some badly produced programs where the actors are just standing there, and it's like the queue is like and then they decide to talk, and they don't realise that the camera was on them too early. Like, it's sort of like badly edited.
See, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, but I only saw it on like I caught it on like a still frame. I said Department of Administrative Affairs, and again, all on film. So all that's on film. Pardon?
What's the assistant's name? His assistant?
Oh, this guy, the other guy. This guy's called Weasel, but they all call him Weasel.
Right. What type do you think he is?
I do not know. I do not know. I don't know. I don't know. And then these are the guys that work for the civil service. So the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, the civil servants, and they're trying to sideline this guy. Look, go down there. We don't want you in here. We're here to. We don't need a political advisor. We don't need you, Karl Rove. That kind of advisor. So the equivalent of like Steve Bannon or whatever. But again, he's just a minister, just like a secretary. So, for instance, if this were American, they would say that he was the secretary for the Department of Administrative Affairs. And again, they've switched from film to tape. Because in those days, the location work, the film cameras were lighter than the television cameras, but it was more expensive to shoot on film than it was on tape. And in a studio, they shot on tape, on large video cameras. Right, and then this is where he's meeting for Sir Humphrey Appleby, and this is the guy that you had a bad feeling about.
Yes.
So what was it about him that you didn't like?
He just seems like a fucking snake.
Ooh! Ooh, maybe a little bit. And then you got the younger bureaucrat. And that was the moment when he made that joke about the chair. There's two kinds of chairs, like two kinds of politicians. One that folds up under pressure and the other one that keeps going around in circles. And this was the moment where he was like shaking his head, and I was thinking, no, you've gone a little bit too far there, Bernard. You need to show a little bit more respect to the minister, even if it's like completely fake respect. Oh, that's why you're pissed off by him. That's like the FE break. I hate people being with the fake FE, isn't it? You hate that. Like,
yeah, I think that's what it is.
The false wolf.
Look at his face.
He's a very good actor to be able to do that. Oh yeah, so giving him all this work. Now, what do I like about this image, Hayley?
Oh yeah, the painting.
The lighting, yes, the lighting, yes.
Yes.
That's how you do it. And then this guy, that's when they had this discussion. Actually, that was towards the end. But again, they had some nice lines about government where, like Obama had the Affordable Care Act, but it wasn't, it sort of led to things being less affordable. And then you had the Patriot Act that wasn't very patriotic because it sort of led to a surveillance state to actually monitor people to make sure they weren't evading taxes. And so they say about it, always dispose of the difficult bit in the title, because then you can sort of do the opposite. And then you have the bit where, and then like I said, there's stuff about, remember Drain the Swamp, I've mentioned that. And then the thing about defense contracts that span multiple administrations. So I think they started like the F-35 fighter in like the Clinton era. And then that's gone through the Obama era, and then it's gone through the Trump era, and then he's started saying, I don't think we want these F-35, I think we want these Super Hornets instead. These F-35s are too expensive. But you sort of like get yourself in these agreements. So there's always like this stuff that carries on, these legacy things that have been these agreements that they enter into with other countries. So, for instance, here's an interesting bit where Sir Arnold, this guy, talks about, and this was a clever bit, the law of inverse relevance. The less you intend to do about something, the more you have to keep talking about it. So it's like sometimes you get that with the SDPs, like they will tell you a lie so often that you will believe it, because only like an SDP would have the nerve to tell the lie that often, whereas other people wouldn't have the nerve to tell a lie and like be evasive so they wouldn't get caught out. Whereas, so it's like, so when Trump talks about securing the border and tariffs and renegotiating trade with China, that people tend to believe him. But I personally think that he'll try to stick with that because of the love of his supporters, which are like the only people that like him. I wrote something about ESDPs. ESDPs are good at this. They have the nerve to keep repeating a lie. But then they can also say, it was my intention at the time, but the circumstances changed and I adapted. Because they are ultimately very adaptable people, ESDPs. Oh, yes, and then they had a talk with Bernard later on, and they said, it's a contradiction in terms. You can either be open or you can have government. And then Sir Humphrey Appleby, you don't just give people what they want if it's not good for them. If people don't know what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing wrong. And it's like Trump during the election campaign doesn't give specifics, so then people can't find holes. So he would say things like, I'm going to replace Obamacare with something fantastic, something tremendous. It's going to be the best thing ever. And he never gave any details, because then someone like you and INTJ would go, this, and this is a problem, like poking holes with the TI Plus creative function. We talked about that the other night. And then me thinking that maybe Sir Humphrey's an INTJ. I know you don't like that, but I think he's strategic in his thinking.
Just developed FE.
Yeah, maybe. It's sort of like obsequious. It's when someone's being... I've forgotten the word for when somebody's fake with a superficial warmth. Being obsequious. Sycophantic as well. Fake FE. Two-faced. Yes, definitely two-faced.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's why I was saying, do you think it's FI, like in the case of Hillary Clinton, something like this, where he truly believes that what he's doing is right, and over the years he's just learned to implement this fake FE thing because of his whacked up FI.
Yeah, I mean, because somebody with good FE would come across as genuinely warm. They wouldn't come across as a sneaky snake. Whereas people who are bad at it, who are trying to, this is what INTJs, when INTJs try to do this, it's like when you said a certain INTJ, it looks like they're putting on a face.
Yeah.
It's like INTJ is doing something that they really shouldn't do. Like, so when an INTJ tries to put the charm on, especially if a male INTJ, it's like a little bit awkward. And it depends how well developed they are.
Right.
So that's why they will come across as... But yes, I mean, I think he genuinely... There's a whole thought process behind why he believes what he believes. I can understand it within the bureaucracy that there's a certain way of doing things. These politicians don't know what they're doing. They haven't got a clue. It's like they pick somebody. It's like they pick they picked your former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, to be the Secretary of Education. Sorry, the Secretary of Energy. I don't think Rick Perry's got a science background. And in fact, he got eliminated in the 2012 primary because he gave one of the departments that he failed to mention that he would get rid of was the Department of Energy, and so people thought that Rick Perry wasn't bright enough to be president, and that's sort of like that scuppered his campaign. Oh yeah, then there was on the call, and then this was the idea, the strategic plan of, okay, this is when this guy comes in. So this is the strategy that Sir Humphrey came up with. Okay, here is the strategy. I'll just talk a bit about this. I'll go over here. Right. So he deliberately puts in information about a contract where these a lot of computer terminals are going to be supplied by an American company in Pittsburgh, rather than by a company that's in Jim Hacker's own constituency. And they planted it there because they knew what his reaction would be. And it, like I said, they put it in the box of his advisor, that guy that came in, that short guy, Weasel. And they said put it near the bottom, because he's thinking that if they put it near the top, it would look a bit conspicuous, or conspicuous, as Trigger would call it. And so they find that. So let's say again, the strategic thinking of being ahead and the tactical thinking of him there, thinking, oh, we've got them. But the strategic thinking, like thinking so many moves ahead. And so they think, okay, we can go to the press about this and say, look, this is not right. We should get this American company. Let's do it to buy British.
Yeah.
But then he goes through the bigger picture, and Sir Humphrey says, well, but the Prime Minister wants good relations with the United States. And obviously the United States wants Britain to buy America. And as I talked about before, that can be justified because, like, for the past 40 or 50 years, the United States has spent more than their fair share defending Europe with the NATO expenditure. Because the United States spends a far bigger percentage on defence than in the UK and these other members of NATO, so that they aren't pulling their weight, as Donald Trump has mentioned. So there is some excuse for, again, motivation and reasoning behind that.
Give me just a second. I have to plug my laptop in, or it's going
okay.
to
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a complex plot, and so then they know he's going to take it to the Prime Minister, and he said, oh, the new policy of open government is that you've got to alert the press of this. And because they know what the reaction will be when he talks to the Prime Minister, because right at the beginning, he asked, Sir Humphrey Appleby asked Sir Arnold and he found out what the reaction would be to a Prime Minister if this sort of thing happened. And he said, oh, it would cut short a political career. And just based on that tiny bit of information, he was able to extrapolate this elaborate plan. And so he knows what the consequence would be, and he tells Jim Hacker, okay, we're going to do this policy. And then Jim Hackers think, oh no, this is going to go to the press because of this new open government policy that I've implemented. And then he's worried that then he gets to a point where, can't we hush it up? And then he says, can't we hush it up? Are you sure you want to go against your position? Yeah, but you see, it's about my political position. That's the thing with politics. The politicians get own about their own re-election rather than what's best. And the way he said it as well, can't we push it up a bit? And like the very good comedy performance. Now, what you notice throughout the series, though, is that Jim Hacker learns and he gets a lot smarter as the series goes along. And there's a transitional period in the middle, in a full-length, feature-length episode. Anyhow, so then Sir Humphrey comes in and says, oh, I'm sorry, the press release didn't go out because we were using the old policy. Oh, and Jim Hacker's like, oh, that's okay. The new policy of open government didn't get me in trouble. So maybe we should stick with the old policy of like lengthy procedures and checking everything up. with things. So so Humphrey, like doing the strategic INTJ, like strategic planning, knowing what the tactical response would be from them, knowing that their reaction would be, oh, we can take advantage of this by mentioning this company. You know, like Donald Trump, like he would. Now, sometimes tactics works better than strategy, because you have to sort of like be very, very clever to work out exactly how it's going to play out. And you've probably thought of a lot of circumstances and situations that don't actually plan out the way. And you've done a lot of like INTJ thinking of this, and it's not planned out how you thought. And so Donald Trump would act tactically and say, I'm going to stop you moving your plant to Mexico. I'm going to make you keep it in the United States. Like these sort of like tactical, short-term, what he would say, nimble things. So sometimes strategy works, sometimes tactics work. And tactics is more short-term and immediate, and strategy is more long-term and remote. So it depends whether you have a tactical mindset. They're also called political expediency, where you take advantage of an issue, or versus long-term strategy. So now we will go back to the images. I will go over here. We'll talk about some relevances. So this is the bit where he comes in, he's super excited, he thinks he can take tactical advantage of finding out about the buying the computers from America. And he's thinking about the political things of, hang on a minute, we make computers in our constituency. And then there's this bit where he does the speech. And I played you it before the hangout, didn't I? About the Churchillian voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you found it funny because I had Haley play a clip of Churchill and then play a clip of Jim Howard. Do you think he did sound a bit like him towards the end?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a little bit like Obama folks sounding a little bit like MLK in certain times. And then just a bit about, then when the Prime Minister fight, and this is the Chief Whip. Oh yeah, he had a good line when he told Jim Hacker, in politics you need to learn to say things with tact and finesse, you Burke. So it's like saying, in politics you need to learn to say things with tact and finesse, you asshole. Right. Right. And again, he's got good facial reactions. All right. So this is the bit where Sir Humphrey Appleby knows what the reaction will be from the Prime Minister, who's going to have a meeting with the American president, and they want to keep up good business relations. And then Sir Arnold, and this is right towards the end, where he says, oh, I'm sorry, we were going off the old procedure, and we never released the press statement. And he's happy. Now he's happy with the old procedure. Now, the writers took a little bit of a liberty by saying that they're equating just releasing a press statement equates to the whole of open government. But it is an example, though, of the advantage to politicians of closed government, because it's that bit there. If people don't know what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing wrong. Where if you've got a microscope on things, it's like when they found out about Hillary Clinton's emails. They found out a load of stuff about her and about the DNC not wanting Bernie Sanders elected. And like what they did is they arranged to have the debates on the weekend, and they hardly had any debates, and usually it was up against a football game or something popular. And so not as many people watched. Realization. And then we have the simple graphics. These get better in subsequent episodes, and maybe even in the next one. The why. I mean, that's sort of like a little bit like a woman being defined by the why. Well, it's her decision. She chose to take that role. Right. Anthony J and Jonathan Lynn. What was a good balance here? That Anthony, I think one of them was more left wing and one of them was more right wing. So they had a nice balance. But ultimately, I would say this is like all the libertarians were like jumping on tables and say, "I told you, this is what government's like. I told you." It's self-interest and wanting to grow government and their own power. Their own power base. The more people they employ, the more power they have. The career bureaucrats. There we go. In 1979. Oh, and I just got it. Just a little bit of duplication there. I'll just close that. So now I'm back to you. So we've been through that. We've been through some issues. So from something made in 1979 in a different country with a similar political democratic system, can you see the relevance to today?
Yeah.
And not just that, I like the power dynamics, that the politicians aren't really different from like the previous generation, that the same instincts of self-interest of politicians to stay in office. And they also have this thing called NIMTO, where they don't want to do something that is not in my term of office. Because they want the benefit in the short term. And they also have a thing called NIMBY, the NIMBYs. And the Kennedys were guilty of being a NIMBY. They were all for like windmills and stuff, but not in their backyard on the Sound in Massachusetts where they could see windmills. I like windmills, but they didn't want to see them in like an area from their compound in Massachusetts Bay. So NIMBY, not in my backyard. Right, so it's like those people who are in favour of taking in refugees, but not in their area. NIMBY, you're a NIMBY, not in my backyard. Or NIMTO. Oh, then there's something else that they have. It's like where the Obama administration and in the UK, they'll set up a board. Like they have a Labour Relations Board. And it's like, that's not part of the government. They've created something that's not actually part of the government. But it's, so they call that a Quango, which stands for, well, they call that in England a Quango, but it's pretty much the same thing, which is quasi-unelected ancillary non-governmental organisation. And a lot of it is to get distance from the repercussions of these things by saying, oh no, it wasn't my decision, it was the decision of the board. So there's all this power. And we now what we can talk about is a little bit, if you want to talk about it. So Hayley, do you think all these government regulations make it hard for someone to start a business, say their own gym? Perhaps that's a video series in its own right. That is.
Yeah, I took that video down, but yeah, I was talking about that at one point, that I almost wish I would have been born, not now, years ago, and could have started things up at that point.
Yeah, and it's like people were still safe 20 years ago. They weren't drinking lead paint or something. They still had regulations then. It's just now it's regulations for regulating. Oh yeah, that was it. That what Jim Hanger said when he said bureaucrats making work for other bureaucrats. So people making work for each other. But now, let me give you another example of this. And this is one of the reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed. Three of the reasons were the Soviet Union was propped up a lot by oil, because they were the largest producer of oil. And so in the 1970s, they got a lot of money from oil production. In the 1980s, the oil price collapsed. That's why recently Putin's not been able to spend as much money on the military. And they only have Putin's like they have gone like so capitalist in Eastern Europe and Russia. Their top tax rate, Haley, you would approve of. You know what it is? The top tax rate in Russia.
Yeah.
It's not 70%. It's not 30%. It's not 50%. It's 12%. They have a 12% flat tax in Russia. And anyway, so the point is, so in the 1980s, you had a low amount, oil price collapsed. So the Soviet Union's not getting much money from they had the problem that America's had. All this money spending on wars in Afghanistan for 10 years, from 1979 to 1989. They had that nuclear disaster with Chernobyl in 1986. So that's three other things. Now, the other thing was when the Soviet Union first started and things were simpler, the technology was simpler, then it was easier to have a centrally planned economy where you have one government saying, oh, you do it like this, you design it like that, and that. But then when things get more technologically advanced and you have to try and control all of these, it's like I talk about, like, if the example of one person has to direct a movie, imagine one person having to direct 1,000 movies. What would happen? Well, they probably all turn out very similar, and they probably wouldn't change the way they do things without an impetus for change. So the planet, so as the technology gets much more, so for instance with aircraft, after the Second World War, aircraft in the Soviet Union and aircraft in the United States, you could make an aircraft in a couple of months or a couple of years. They just had a jet engine, they didn't have radar, very basic. Then getting 20 years later, and you're getting, they've got radar, very complex electronics, then fly-by-wire, and it takes like 10 years to design an aircraft. And then you got the F-35, which they started that in 1995, and it's still not ready because it's so complex. So you had that in the Soviet Union where you just have the level of complexity in technology being so much that you can't plan it from the government. And so it becomes, and so then you got the bureaucracy building up and up and up and up and up, where things just get so complicated that it's hard to organize from the top down. You see what I mean? Like I said, if you've got a really simple economy, then you could have like a king saying, you've got to do everything like this. And because everything's simple, you can organize it that way. So, folks, that's pretty much the end, unless Haley has something extra to say about governmental principles.
No, unfortunately.
Imagine how much, Haley, and if you watch all these folks, how much you will know about government. From a libertarian point of view, this whole series will be government gold. Libertarian gold about, and a lot of the politicians, I've seen interviews with politicians on both sides, and when they did a slight remake of this with new scripts by the exact same writers. It came out in 2012 by the same writers, and they did issues. So they did one episode on Scottish independence, one on the Middle East and things like that, and Europe. And like Jim Hacker was going on about these bloody bureaucrats in Europe. And of course, since last year, hey, that was a better birthday present than this year. Britain leaving the EU, yes. I was happy about that. But you had they did a documentary on it, and you had politicians from the Labour Party, so the left-wing party, and from the Conservative Party, the slightly right-wing party, not right-wing enough, in my opinion. And they both liked the programme because they had an experience of what it was like in government, they have a policy that they want to enact, and they give it to the civil service, and they're like, how do we enact this silly policy? This is ridiculous. It's like, say you have a policy, so for instance, it used to be illegal to record programs off television before 1989, and probably in the United States as well. Just with the VCR, it used to be illegal to record them. And they're probably and the police, and they eventually said, well, how do we enforce this law? Can't enforce that law. Right. It's ridiculous. And so it's like certain laws that people come up with, they can't be enforced. They can't be implemented properly. Oh yes, and so both parties like this. Both, and although I would say that the left wing has misinterpreted it because it's actually a whole criticism of the institution of government to start with. Now I'll end on a joke that actually a Labour politician said, and he said that there was an error in translation when, and you know when they said that they used the term permanent secretary. Said that when they went to Japan, this person was introduced, when they translated, they interpreted permanent secretary to eternal typist.
Kind of cynical.
Yeah. Yes, no, a permanent secretary. So permanent goes to eternal and secretary goes to typist. You're probably thinking, Ben, I don't think that's true. But that's what the politician said. But they have been known to that. It's a good anecdote, though. Eternal typist.
That's just bleak.
I tell you what, though, if that interpreter was an ENTP, he probably would have said that. They would take that opportunity to like make that joke, I think. Because they would think, if they hear that, because you do get these weird interpreters, and I can let you into a little secret. Now, yeah, you see, this is why people should watch all of my videos. All you socionics people who can't hear this, so I don't know why I'm giving you. But for everyone who's hearing this, and it might be a small number of people, I can actually tell you something about Victor and the people that interpret for him. They don't interpret everything that he says. And I won't say why, but that not everything is interpreted. Let's just say that they interpret what makes sense to them. So what is consistent and fits them. Because Victor is so much about new theories, like generating new theories and stuff. So if the theory is maybe a little bit too new, a little bit too radical, that's not necessarily come through in the interpretation. Because he's a very he always wants new stuff, and it's like so the interpreters are that's a little bit too new. So I won't interpret that. I'll just paraphrase. So that's what I've been told. Anyway, I should have told you that, but seeing as no buggers watching this anyway, I've said that, and everyone who has watched it, thumbs up. Don't repeat it. Right. But everyone knows stuff gets lost in translation. So thank you, Hayley, for watching this with me, and we will watch, hopefully, the next episode after we've reviewed Only Fools and Horses, where Rodney's dream comes true, and he meets a woman in uniform, a policewoman, who happens to look like a frequent guest of mine, Hannah. So, bye-bye, folks.